Good evening, my fellow countrymen and women, and welcome to the second edition of my planned real-time interactions with you using my social media channels. Obviously, I have found your comments, contributions, and also the criticisms anytime I make a post on my Facebook page or I tweet or load up a photo or video on my Instagram very insightful. And there are many ideas and viewpoints one gathers from going through the various news feeds and threads of friends and followers on these pages. So keep your comments and criticisms coming in. If you are not following any of my handles, they are at JD Mahama for Facebook and Twitter, John Mahama TV for YouTube, and official JD Mahama for Instagram. But it is that time of the year, and we are less than 48 hours from Christmas Day. And I want to wish you a very merry and joyous Christmas. Christmas, as we all know, is a time to share. While I know that times are hard and things are difficult, indeed that presents us probably the most opportune time to live by the significance of the occasion and share the little that we have with our neighbors, our friends, or even strangers. Sharing, we're told, is caring, and the more we share, the more we have. And while on the subject of sharing, I will in the next hour and a half be sharing with you my thoughts and views on some of the major developments in our country today. For many, there's more than enough reason to believe that the state of affairs today portends what will be doom and gloom if there's no drastic change or course correction. That is true, and that is the very reason why I am running for office. I love my country, Ghana. I've had a chance to drink from the fountain of knowledge and opportunities this nation has offered me. By the grace of God, I am in good health. My party, the NDC, has overwhelmingly endorsed me to lead the party into the elections of 2020. The laws of the land do not bar me from running for office. I'm running to put the vast experience I have garnered in political and private life at the service of my God and country. The experience includes the loss of an election and the lessons that I have learned from it. I'm submitting myself to the will of the Ghanaian people, and as I've always done, I will accept their verdict. I'm looking to work with the people of our dear country to fashion a tomorrow that will lift the current pall of despair hanging over our nation and replace it with rays of hope and confidence, to regain the trust of the Ghanaian people that their leaders and government will be honest and truthful to them. They will be humble and modest and make the opportunities of this country available to all its citizens and not just a few. I'm prepared to listen and bring the necessary changes to meet the expectations of our people. I've always been a man of my words. I've always strived to honor whatever assurances I give to people, a virtue that remained with me as Vice President to President Atta Mills of blessed memory and in my own tenure as President. This evening, I'm here to assure you all, my dear countrymen and women, that the National Democratic Congress that I lead is an alternative that will depart from the status quo. We will not mark ourselves with any percentages. We will listen to the marks given to us by Ghanaians and use it to do even better for them. We will reduce the size of government by radically cutting back the number of ministers and reducing the number of ministries. We will reduce massively the amount Ghanaians spend on the office of the president. We will appreciate the concerns and aspirations of our people, especially the youth, and govern for their benefit and not that of the establishment or any entrenched political interest. We offer an alternative that is honest, sincere, thoughtful, visionary, and one that makes genuine efforts at unifying our broken nation. This nation requires urgent fixing. Our problems have been compounded by the very poor governance characterized by nepotism, corruption, populism, intolerance, and the arrogance of power and ostentatious lifestyles. In a few days, we'll be entering a new year, a year that heralds an important general election. It is an election whose significance cannot be stressed enough. A team of well-grounded, experienced, and deeply knowledgeable men and women have combined forces with very youthful, driven, and innovative people to flesh out the major policies that will shape our governance within the 4-year mandate that we believe the Ghanaian people will give us in the next year's election. We have opened this process for participation by all the people of Ghana. We've already received hundreds of brilliant ideas. We will deepen this process in the coming weeks. As I've been doing with the many groupings and the manifesto committee interactions with various stakeholders, I'm here today with you live to discuss issues, take your questions and suggestions, and deepen the process of citizen conversation. This is a process I'll continue throughout the period leading to the elections and during the period of my presidency, if God wills it. From my review of some of the topical issues on social media, especially over the last few weeks, for today's interaction, I want to take your questions on issues bordering on education, on youth development and sustainable jobs, on healthcare, on the Electoral Commission and its preparations towards the 2020 elections, the size of government and public expenditure, and other such matters of concern to you. If you have a question or comment on any of these matters that I have raised, send it to me now with the hashtag John Mahama Live, and I'll answer as many of them as I can before 6:30 p.m. For today, I've also invited a cross-section of Ghanaians from academia, civil society, media, and the youth front for this interaction, and I'll be looking forward to taking their questions too. So let me welcome you all from across the country and abroad, both online and on some TV networks. And to my in-house guests who are here with me, I warmly welcome you. I'll start off with some questions from Facebook and Twitter and come in-house for some more interactions. God bless our dear nation, Ghana. Thank you. Of the people of Ghana. First two initiatives. I will abolish the 50% increase in communication services tax. It's a nuisance tax. Ghanaians are complaining about it. We need to encourage Ghanaians to be part of the digital economy, and therefore overtaxing use of data and telecommunications is not the way to go. So that's the first one. The second one, I will drastically reduce the size of government. We don't need 125 ministers. I'll work with far less ministers. I already told the president that he should sack 40 of his ministers and close their ministries. I mean, you don't need a senior minister. You don't need a minister for business development. You don't need a minister for monetary and evaluation. You don't need a minister for procurement when there are so many procurement infractions. So drastically reduce the size of government and reduce the size of ministers, reduce the size of ministries, and also reduce the expenditure that Ghanaians spend on the office of the president. And so those are the immediate things that I will do. Graduate unemployment has been on the rise. Your opponents say they have introduced NAPCO. But the ordinary Ghanaian, this is from Bismarck, Ayeni, Abuakai. Your opponents say they have introduced NAPCO, but the ordinary Ghanaian believes that this is not sustainable. What will you do differently to help reduce this phenomenon? Yes, we have things that we call ad hoc job creation. And so because you don't have an immediate solution to something, you resort to an ad hoc solution. And so things like NAPCO are temporary fixes. They are not permanent fixes. And what we need to do is to look for a permanent fix. I believe that if we invest more money in expanding the digital economy and ICT, we can find many jobs in that sector for young people. We're currently doing what we call a human resource gap analysis of the public sector. There are many areas where we still need manpower, but we're not able to fill because we've not done an analysis of where the jobs are. And so we're employing in other places where we already have a saturation, when there are areas that we can employ more. And so we'll do a human resource gap analysis of the whole public sector, and we'll fill the vacancies. This will include the Revenue Authority, how we can improve efficiency in the Revenue Authority, the police force, the other security services, in agribusiness, in state-owned enterprises, and so on and so forth. And so we'll do that so that we can see how to expand the opportunities available to young people. The service sector has overtaken agri as the largest sector and the fastest growing in our economy. So what incentives can we give to the service sector in order that it can take in more people? Tourism is one place we have not invested enough in. Even though we're getting in excess of 900,000 visitors a year, we can push that up to 2 million visitors a year if we do the right investments in tourism, and that will bring more people in. We'll encourage young people to be entrepreneurial and do startups, set up their own businesses, and see how they can also become employers instead of employees. And there's much more we can do. Rich Lane from Memphis, he says, Daddy, please, I trust in capabilities, but that notwithstanding, I want to suggest you try on your second coming to make vocational education free at the tertiary level to help curb the unemployment rate. Indeed, one of the programs, and I have sat with our policy subcommittee on education, is to make TVET training free of charge, not only at the tertiary level, but right from the technical institutes, so that we can move more of our people into technical skills, the sciences and engineering. Right now, we're producing a lot of people in the humanities, and some of the areas that they are studying in are saturated. And so they come out and they cannot find jobs in the areas of study. So they are forced to go and teach in some kindergarten or primary school, and that is not what they were trained for. And so if we can rescale their skills and put more people into the technical vocational training area, we're sure that we can create more jobs, and business and industry can absorb more of them. Amenyavi Stephen, I want to know, Mr. President, how soon do you intend to complete the abandoned schools, hospitals, etc., begun by your government? And also, as we are aware, review according to the current government means cancellation. Can you explain that? Article 6 of the Ghanaian Constitution, called the Directive Principles of State Policy, enjoin every succeeding government to continue the projects begun by its predecessor. And this has happened in the past. I remember when Professor Mills came into office, there were projects President Kufuor was undertaking, including the Bui Dam project, including the N1 highway, and all of them. These projects continued, and indeed when Professor Mills was going to commission them, he invited President Kufuor to come and sit next to him, and they commissioned the N1 road project. The Bui Dam got finished in my time, and I knew that it started in President Kufuor's time. So I invited President Kufuor to come and join me to commission it. That is the kind of spirit we want to see in Ghana. We don't want the spirit where, because one government was building community day schools, you've abandoned all of them all over the country. Because one government was building hospitals, they've been abandoned all over. I have made a promise to the people of Ghana that as soon as I come, we will take up the abandoned projects, hospitals, schools, and we will start them again and finish them so that they can benefit the people of Ghana, because this is the taxpayers' money. We cannot leave it to rot. And I've also said that any projects that President Akufo-Addo has started, if I become president, I will continue those projects and complete them. I'm not going to abandon them. What is this one? Mr. President, good evening. Before you left office, a gallon of fuel, petrol was selling for 14 cedis, 50 pesos. Today it's about 25 cedis. Given the opportunity again, will the price come down? Since it influences every commodity in the market, that affects the purchasing power of Ghanaian people. Thank you very much. Let me see who asked the question so that I can acknowledge him. Isaac Aduko. Thank you very much. This is an important question. We have a policy working group looking at this particular issue. I believe that there's still a lot of inefficiency in the distribution chain of petroleum products. What I did when I became president, in order to streamline it, was I combined the synergies of BOST and TOR. And so there was one chief executive in charge of BOST and TOR. And because of the improved efficiency between the two of them in handling petroleum products, we're able to keep petroleum products at a much lower level than they would have been if we had left it the way it was. And so when I come as president again, I'm going to appoint one chief executive to be in charge of both BOST and TOR. And we will rebuild BOST capacity as a state-owned enterprise. We took BOST from the worst performing state-owned enterprise. By the time we left office, BOST was the best performing state-owned enterprise. And we will rebuild BOST again to claim its glory, and we'll let it work together with the Tema Oil Refinery so that we can ensure that the efficiency of distribution in the system will bring down prices and go to the benefit of our people. Which is the next one? Okay. So, well, you're welcome to send your questions and comments in, but let me turn to my in-house guest. Araba, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Albert, my old compadre. You're very welcome. So maybe we'll start with Albert.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, Your Excellency.
And then we'll come to, you just mention who you are, just a small introduction, and then you can go.
Albert Salia is my name, from the Daily Graphic,
Yeah.
acting political editor.
Yeah.
Considering your background as an activist of the party, through going to government as a deputy minister, minister, vice president, and president, with all this vast experience from the your last position in office,
Yeah.
what would you say that you do differently from what you did in the last administration so that Ghanaians would give you that more?
Yeah, thank you very much. As I said, when I was explaining why I'm running, I said I'm running because this country has been good to me. I've received many opportunities. It's enabled me to garner a lot of experience under my belt. And in the time that we were in government, we did a lot to stabilize the economy and grow the economy. Of course, there are some things that one would probably have put more emphasis on, and that's why I say there are lessons that one has learned that one can correct when one comes into office again. And I mentioned several of them. We must be modest in office. We must be humble in office. We must be truthful to Ghanaians. While Ghanaians are tightening their belts and going through hardship, we must not be ostentatious. We must not be arrogant in power. We must listen to criticism. These are the things that I can do differently from the lessons that we have learned from having been in office before. Aside from that, one has created a network of people having been president before that we can leverage to use to assist Ghana's growth and development. And so these are some of the areas that I think we should be working on. And I pledge to the people of Ghana that we will listen to them, and whatever concerns they have, if God grants me a second term in office, we will see a more transparent government. We will deal more with the issue of corruption in terms of strengthening the institutions that deal with corruption. Corruption is something that affects everybody. And the best way we can fight it is to strengthen the institutions in order that they can work in the fight against corruption. If you appoint an office of special prosecutor and you hobble the prosecutor so that he's not able to prosecute anybody, then you cannot keep saying that we're fighting corruption because we've created this office. The Auditor General, from the reviews that I've heard, is doing quite well in terms of the work he's doing. People like that should be encouraged rather than discouraged. And so those are things that we'll do. We'll come with a renewed fight against corruption. We'll introduce mechanisms where award of contracts are more transparent than they currently are. We'll improve the procurement, of government agencies so that it benefits Ghanaian indigenous companies rather than foreigners. And we will put Ghanaians at the commanding heights of this economy. We try to do it in the road sector, by ensuring that we created more Ghanaian businessmen in the construction space. And we gave contracts that were in our budget to these contractors, irrespective of whether whatever your political affiliation or ethnic affiliation was. Many contractors benefited. Unfortunately, when the new government came and refused to pay them, it has affected many of them. They've laid off their workers. The banks are going after them because of equipment that was purchased for them. So there's a lot that we will do that is different from what we're seeing today.
Just a follow-up from that, talking about the award of contracts, one of the critical issues raised against you by even some party members was the fact that they were neglected in terms of projects or contracts by the government, and therefore there was a lukewarm attitude during the electioneering and even the voter turnout.
Albert, you see, but that's what's making our country not go forward. It should be about people's merit to be able to execute the contract properly, rather than because of what political party card they hold. And so, even though, yes, we got criticized, because we looked at the merits. I mean, if the contracts to be awarded, we tendered them. And if you qualified to do it and you won it, we didn't say because you held an MPP party card or a CPP party card, you should be denied that. And so it's an occupational hazard that you get. I mean, if party people are qualified and they can execute contracts, there's no reason why you should not allow them to be able to do it because they are party people. But I'm saying that you should not wear political lenses when you are doing things like that, because then what it does is it pulls the country back. If you award contracts to only your people, and then you leave office after 4 years, then the next government comes and awards contracts to only their people, where are we going to build a nation? Yes, Ndidi. That's an interesting name. Yes, hi, you're welcome. All right.
So, my name is Edith Caislin Dedefojo.
And Dedefojo?
Yes.
Okay.
So
and you work with?
Ghana Shippers Authority.
Oh, Ghana Shippers, okay.
So, you promised to carry on the projects of the MPP should you come into office.
Yeah.
Given the fact that they have some quite ambitious projects, and knowing that you're going to come with your own projects, and given the fact that you also have some old projects that have not been fully completed, how are you going to weigh all these three, the new ones, MPPs, and your previous government's projects? How are you going to select them and make sure that the budget is allocated in such a way that you minimize the kind of criticisms you get?
Yeah, fantastic question. And I thank you very much for it. We need to look at the revenues that are available to us. And as you're aware, the IMF has said that Ghana is one of the countries in danger of debt distress because this government has borrowed at such a rate that they've almost doubled the public debt that they inherited from all the past governments. And so we're going to face all those constraints. And so one of the things to do would be not to start new projects. And we're already doing an appraisal of existing abandoned projects. We've gone around, we've looked at the schools we're building, you know, where else we want to build any schools. We're looking at the hospitals that have been abandoned and all the projects that we started that have been abandoned. We will also do an analysis of the projects that MPP has started, you know, and we're not going to let them stop halfway. But in the first year, we will not start any new projects unless they're essentially critical, so that all the revenue that we raise will go into continuing these old projects. And it's only when we have brought these projects on stream that we will start to nominate new projects. Yeah, I think that that's the way to go. Ava, good to see you again.
Mr. President, good afternoon.
Merry Christmas.
Okay, my name is Arab. Merry Christmas to you too. I'm Arab Crimson, editor at Joy News. So I want us to talk about the free senior high school policy. You're on record as saying that you will review the policy if you assume office. Now, that has lent itself to some misinterpretation. Just yesterday...
Deliberate misinterpretation, yes.
Just yesterday, the president at the MPP rally said that by review, you mean to cancel the policy if you do win the elections and you're elected president. Define for us what review exactly means. What does it entail? What is it not, and what is it exactly?
Review is to improve. Even the president, with the current implementation of free SHS, at a point in time, you need to review a policy and see if you are meeting the targets or not. And I believe that he can see that he's not meeting its targets. I mean, the congestion in the schools. I mean, recently a school went on demonstration because they say they can't take the congestion anymore. The reduction in contact.
Where was this?
Well, you are in the media. I'm sure if you Google, you'll find there's a school that demonstrated because they said they were over-congested and they couldn't take it anymore. I mean, the contact hours with teachers has gone down. I'm sure you've seen some of the media posts. There was a parent who said his child was moved from green to gold. They went to school. The first week was sports week. The second week was something. They started learning in about the third week. And after two... Oh, you did? And by the fourth week, they said they should go back home. Yeah. And they should come back in March or February or something. I mean, yeah, how are you going to expect a child like this with such few contact hours to be able to make it? And then aside from that, instead of improving the system, you go and buy past questions and distribute to children. This is the first government I've seen go buy past questions and distribute to children. And so when I say review, I mean to improve. And the first thing we'll do is to abolish the double track. We will fast track the completion of those schools, and we will spread out the children to some of the schools that are completed. There are a lot of projects that we started under the Secondary Educational Improvement Program. It's a World Bank project. And we're building additional dormitories and others. Those projects have all slowed. And so we'll fast track all those projects so that we can create more space in the schools for the children. And that should make it possible for us to abolish the double track in the shortest possible time. We have a track record. We abolished the shift system in the whole of Ghana by expanding space so that every child could go to school at the same time. We can do that in the secondary space. So when I say review, I mean to improve the senior high school, free senior high school. Good policy, poor implementation. That is what it is. Good policy, poor implementation. So we're coming to improve the implementation of it so that Ghanaians, reap the benefit. Parents are complaining because they are having to spend more. You wanted to alleviate them of the burden of spending. Now they're having to spend more on taking extra classes and private teachers for their children because of the reduction in contact hours, in order that they're able to prepare their children to be able to pass their exams. And so, good policy, but you've not implemented it properly. So parents are not getting the full benefit of the free SHS. So when we come, we'll improve it by first finishing the schools as quickly as possible. That will be a #1 priority. And there are areas where there's a high demand for secondary education. When we built the community day schools, I noticed something. We built one at Kwabenya. The day I was commissioning the school was full. We built one at Frafraha, Adenta. The day I was commissioning the school was full. We built one at Chinderi. The day I was commissioning the school was full. So there are areas where there's a high demand for secondary education. We will put schools there so that children can, for instance, one of the issues that came up in our policy working group is that there are areas, for instance, if you go to Medina Adenta, you have West African Secondary School. West African Secondary School has a huge plot of land that it hasn't used. We can build a second secondary school, at a community day school in West Africa Secondary School, so that we double the capacity of that place to take in children. So you have the existing West African Secondary School with its headmaster, and you have a community day secondary school with its headmaster. And so just by that simple action, you'd have doubled the amount of children that would be absorbed from the Medina Adenta area to be able to go to secondary school. So there are a lot of innovative ideas like this that on hindsight we are looking at and we'll be able to implement to bring relief to parents. Thank you. Francis.
Okay. So, Your Excellency, I'm Francis Kennedy Okulu, popularly known as Awareness General on Facebook.
What?
Awareness General.
Awareness General.
Yeah, so I create awareness on
okay.
every issue.
Okay.
But whenever I create political issue, I get enemies because I was for the MPP and now I'm back to the NDC.
I see.
So with my ears on the ground, I hear Ghanaians are actually yearning for your comeback. But there are fears that you did terrible things. Now, what assurance can you give to Ghanaians, especially with the area of electricity, where now the MPP is using as a trump card that they reduce electricity drastically? And then another area is petroleum prices, which when it goes up, there is kind of disaster. What are you going to do with these two basic things? Electricity bills and then petroleum prices. Okay. Are you going to sustain it? Will you try to let it go down, or we are also going to see it go up as it is going in their time?
Okay. I'll give you a little schooling on the electricity sector. Okay. We have Electricity Company of Ghana and NEDCO. Okay. They are the main distributors of power in Ghana. Now they buy the electricity from the generating companies, and these include VRA and the independent power producers, Ameri, Car Power, and all the others. And so they buy that power at a certain price, and they also sell it to us at a certain price. Now, in 2018, when there was that reduction in price, it led to a debt of almost 5 billion cedis. So, as a Ghanaian, you say, oh, they came and reduced the price, but they were just postponing Armageddon for you. And so this year they increased the price back. But after increasing the price back, they've left you with a debt of billions of cedis, which somebody must pay. Nana Addo is not going to pay from his pocket. All of us will be called upon to pay again. That is why they increased ESLA recently, to pay down the additional debts that they created by reducing the tariffs. So you are going to pay that tariff. That, you are paying it. You started paying it because they've increased ESLA. Okay. And that extra money from ESLA is going to pay that debt that you enjoyed for that 1 year or 1 year plus. So you haven't gained anything. And now your tariffs have gone back up. It was 17% down, 17% up. Meanwhile, there's a debt that has led to an increase in, anytime you buy fuel, the ESLA that we left has been increased by 25% to claw back the 5 billion that you enjoyed. It's as simple as that. Now the point is, we were negotiating to bring gas from the west to east so that we will put all our thermal plants on gas so that they don't use liquefied natural gas. You can get an almost 30% reduction in cost of generation by using gas. And so we left office, we left all the negotiations we were having with the West African Gas Pipeline to move the gas from west to east so that we could stop the plants there from using liquefied petroleum gas. This government dilly-dallied with the whole thing until this year that they started the actual work of trying to connect. Our policy is gas to power. And so any gas that we have, we want to use it to produce power so that we can bring the cost of electricity down for Ghanaians and for industry. And so if they finish the transfer and the gas starts flowing to the east, then it means that all the plants that we have about 60% of our assets in the east, many of whom are not getting gas. If they all start getting gas, it will bring down the cost. And if it brings down the cost, government should transfer that reduction in cost to Ghanaians so that we can have cheaper, tariffs. But even if it comes down, we should give industry cheaper tariffs so that then they can expand their plants and employ more Ghanaians. In Ghana, we have the reverse. The industries pay more and residential pay less. Instead of in all other countries, industry pays less and residential pays more so that they can create more jobs so that we can work and earn money to pay our electricity bills. And so that's the issue about electricity. With petroleum, I tried to explain it. If we're able to bring efficiency into the distribution system, then we should be able to bring down the prices so that Ghanaians can take the benefit of it.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Princess.
Yeah, so I'm Princess Bar. I'm in Lancaster University, a law student, so my focus is mainly on the whole law issue and the entry into the law school.
Yeah.
So basically, I want to know what your office what does your office have planned for us in terms of policies and making the whole education accessible and more interesting for we upcoming lawyers.
Okay. I think when the law students did the demonstration, my office was one of the places they came. And I had time, I met with them, they explained issues to me and all that. And I made a statement. I said that there should be no artificial barriers to people being able to attain their career objectives because we want to restrict the number of people in the particular career. What is being done is to reduce the number of people qualifying as lawyers because people feel that there are too many lawyers being produced. That's the basic thing. And so the main problem that has been created is students in law school in the program already, 80% of them were failed. And so it means they have to repeat in the law school. Now, if they are repeating, the space left to accommodate those who will come and continue is small. So then they have to fail as many of those who are waiting to enter so that they can keep that small number in the law school. That's the major problem. I can't believe that, our children of today, that we took this number of people into law school and this number of them failed, because they have the basic intellect to be able to pass. And so there must be something wrong there. And it's in the bosom of the General Legal Counsel. And so I promised them that if ever I was president, we'll take that matter up and see how we can streamline it so that people can, reach their career goals. You can't stop people from reaching their career goals. Let them, if they want to be lawyers, let them be lawyers. The public will select the best ones amongst them, to represent them. And so it's not for you to deliberately try to curtail their attaining those goals by failing them in order that not many people are called to the bar every year. And so it's something that we are apprised of. I see there are a lot of questions dropping on the Facebook page. And so let me take a few from there, and then we will continue. Kofi, I'll come to you. Kofi Banks. And he says, how do you plan to make sure that Ghana has a national plan passed into law? Okay, let me answer that one, and then I'll look at the next one. Kofi Banks, thank you very much. Indeed, that has been one of the problems this nation faces. I remember as a member of President Rawlings' government, he came out with a national plan that was called Vision 2020. I don't know how many of you remember that. You must have been young, very young at the time. And I was a member of Parliament. It was brought to Parliament. We passed it. And then when we were going into the election of 2000, the then minority leader called Honorable J.H. Mensah, I'm sure you remember him, he said that Vision 2020 was suffering from glaucoma in one eye and cataract in the other. And that the minute they take office, it is the first plan they would throw out of the window. And it's true. As soon as President Kufuor came in, they quickly threw Vision 2020 out of the window. And then they started with the poverty reduction strategy. No, first HIPIC. And they went on the HIPIC program. And then later on, they came with the GPRS, Ghana Poverty Reduction Strategy. When Professor Mills took over, he made the GPRS run its term until it ended before he came with the Better Ghana agenda. And so he did not truncate the GPRS. We still went forward meeting the goals of the GPRS until we brought in a new policy. Now, when I became president, we did the 40-year development plan. We consulted widely, opposition, everybody had a buy-in, and we brought it to Parliament, 40-year development plan. As soon as we came, President Akufo-Addo came, they've thrown it out, and they're working with what they call Ghana Beyond Aid. So this change in development planning has been one of the bans that we have. And until we all buy into a plan so that our development is continuous, we'll keep taking 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards. And so it's something that we can look at. It is legislated. It says that within 2 years of coming into office, the president shall present to Parliament a plan on economic development of the country. And so what you do is you take the plan that has been given to you. You might want to vary it or something, so you can vary it, maintain the parts that fit into your ideological framework, add whatever you want, and then let the plan continue. But this thing about jettisoning it and starting the process of writing a new plan is what's making us not go forward. And so that's one of the things. Solomon M. Wyatt says, your ideas will be stolen, Mr. President. Don't give them out. Well, we work for the betterment of Ghana. And so if the government sees anything beneficial in some of the ideas I'm putting out, they are welcome to adopt them for the people of this country. Emmanuel Kojo Nelson wants to know how I'm going to restore hope to Ghanaians when given the opportunity to lead this country. The hardship is too much to bear. I think it's similar to the first question I took. We'll take some immediate action that gives hope to the people. Abolish the communication service tax. We'll reduce the size of ministers. You can't be asking Ghanaians to tighten their belts, and then you have 125 ministers. You have increased the number of ministries, about 50 ministries, and you're not showing modesty in government. Foreign travel alone is 60, how many million Ghana cedis? Chartering jets in foreign countries, just when we have a presidential jet here, you want a bigger one. And so you go take $17,000 an hour planes to travel. We won't do those things. We will sacrifice with Ghanaians as we try to get the economy back on track. Thank you, Your Excellency, for such encounters and your efforts to rescue us from the current hardship we're going through. We now know the difference between you and the others. Let's see the name. Thank you, Kofi Techi. Have a Merry Christmas. Imoro King Faisal wants to know how I would handle the posting of nurses in this country, because it has become a norm that we have to demonstrate and picket before we are posted. Isn't it a tragedy that the government says they have employed 50,000 nurses since they came, and still nurses are picketing, and, demonstrating? I mean, it just shows that it's not true. Recently, we have been told by the Nurses and Midwives Council, or whichever body it is, that the total number of nurses in Ghana does not exceed 70,000. So how could you have employed 50,000 nurses? And so that's a fallacy. What we did was to expand access to healthcare by building new hospitals. You cannot employ nurses when you don't have anywhere to post them. And that's why we started all the district hospitals. And our policy, when we launch our manifesto, is that there will be a modern health facility in every district of this country, depending on the population size of the district. It can be a health center, it can be a polyclinic, it can be a district hospital. And then I already announced that in the 6 new regions, we're going to put 6 new regional hospitals. We're also going to open the University of Ghana Medical Center and operationalize it so that we can employ. All these will lead to the employment of more nurses and doctors. We're going to start phase 2 of the Rich Hospital project so that we can have more beds. We want to end the no-bed syndrome. We shouldn't have an emergency where you go to any hospital and they say, we don't have beds, take the patient away. Or even if they are forced to admit them, then they go bring plastic chairs and put the patient in with a drip by their side. It is not the Ghana of the 21st century. And so we're going to expand the healthcare sector so that we can bring in more nurses and paramedicals. We'll fully operationalize the WA Regional Hospital. I mean, it can take how many nurses? The program that we had before we left office, we're introducing 6,000 new hospital beds. And if every hospital bed requires 3 paramedicals, that's 6,000 times 3. You can imagine how many people we could have employed. And so those are some of the things we'll do in order that we can employ more of our health sector staff. Please, why was your name mentioned so many times at the MPP conference yesterday? Obasima Albarka. Unfortunately, I didn't watch, and so I wouldn't know why. But like I said, this is a government that has continued to play the blame game, since they took over office. I believe that as a president and as a leader, you must be able to take responsibility. In my time, I was landed with a doomsaw, not because of anything I had done, but because preceding governments had not put in enough generation on time so that Ghana's demand for energy was growing, but they had not put in enough generation on time, so our demand outstripped the supply of energy. I went to Parliament, I said, we have analyzed the problem, I recognize the problem, and I take responsibility, and we will solve it. And before I left office in 2016, we had excess generation in this country, our power was stable, and that is what a president should do. Entering your 4th year, you should not be talking about your predecessor. You should be talking about what you can do for the people, or what you have done for the people. If you keep looking back and blaming me for everything, that's fine. You make me more popular. And you mentioned my name many more times for Ghanaians to remember that there was once a president who did this for them. And so I didn't watch the press conference, but that's their problem. Mr. President, please, how are you going to solve the insecurity in this country? Everybody remembers that in our time, crime was low. And that is because we put the right people at the right place. We didn't do promotion in the security services based on your party affiliation. Unfortunately, this is what this government has done. If you are not, committed to their party, other people are promoted over you. So there's demoralization in the security services. If the president likes, he should ask his security personnel. Security services, our security service personnel are not happy. There is demoralization. I was chairman of the Police Council. I was chairman of the Armed Forces Council. When we came into office, we had to let some people who had been promoted over their colleagues. They entered the same year, same merit, they passed the same exam, but they had been promoted over them. We had to let them mark time to let these ones catch up, and then we promoted all of them together. We didn't do promotions based on what a person's political affiliation was. The current CDS, when I was going to appoint him, they said, oh, but he was ADC to President Kufuor. I said, what does it matter? He's next most senior. He has carried out himself well. He deserves it. I appointed him. Unfortunately, that is not the case here. I mean, the armed forces, the police are not happy. And if the president puts his ear on the ground, he will hear what I'm telling him. Let's come back in-house. I was going to Kofi. I'm sure you've had time to think through your question. So let's go.
I'm Kofi Amade. My question is in regards to youth employment.
You're a student, are you?
Yeah, I am.
I see. Which university?
Lancaster University.
Oh, okay. You're both Lancaster.
Yeah.
Good. Welcome.
So for the past 2 years, we've had the youth unemployment rate at 13.7%. So I was wondering what policy considerations your office might put into place if we give you the mandate to.
Okay. I think I've answered the question in some way, but I will probably delve deeper into it. Like I said, if we do a human resource gap analysis of the public services, we might find some areas where that need more people. And so we can either take those who are qualified to go in there or put it out and say, look, we need more of this kind of people. We need more of this kind of people. And people can be guided by it when they're doing their career course options. Now, aside from that, in the banking sector alone, the banking sector crisis has led to almost 20,000 job losses. If you take all the microfinance companies and all of them, about 20,000 job losses. Now, one of the things our policy group is doing is looking at restoring the indigenous participation in the financial sector. It didn't come up by accident. We created it. We realized when I was vice president to Professor Mills that all the banks were owned by foreigners, either Barclays, Stanchart, and all of them, Stanbic. And then the next tier of banks, were owned by mostly Nigerian banks, Zenith, GT Bank, and all of them. And so we said, no, let's encourage some Ghanaians to come into this space. And so UT Bank, Amwabin, was a savings and loans company. We convinced him to go for a banking license. Unibank, was brought in. And then all the other banks, Dr. Ndum. Dr. Ndum was not an NDC person. Indeed, he was with the opposition. And yet we facilitated him to establish a bank, because we believe that Ghanaians must participate in the financial sector. Now, I'll say that I think the way this government handled the financial sector clean-out was very amateurish. It was poorly handled. If you look at some of the banks, one bank needed 120 million bailout to survive. Another one needed 450 million. I mean, if you put the total money that we could have used to salvage the financial sector together, we would not be talking about the 30-something billion that we currently owe. The debt from the meltdown in the financial sector is more than 30 billion. And yet, I don't believe that more than 12 billion of this, would have been needed to bail out a lot of the institutions that were struggling. And the role of a regulator is not to kill your industry. Even if there are infractions and they are not in line, you give them a period. You say, look, within the next 2 years, I want you to go after your debtors and re-liquefy your accounts, we would have saved 20,000 jobs. Today, they've added to the unemployment. A lot of them are young people like you. And so we're going to restore that indigenous participation in the financial sector so that we can employ people again in Ghanaian banks. Then aside from that, I believe we can do more in the, the service sector and the digital economy. And that's where young people feel very comfortable. And if we're able to invest more in that sector, we should be able to create more jobs. I told you about tourism. If we put money in tourism, we will reap the benefits within a year or 2 or 3, and we can bring more young people into the tourism space. Agribusiness. Of course, young people don't want to go to the farm and bend over with a hoe and cutlass. But if you put a small factory that is processing and packaging agricultural products, a lot of young people would want to do that. And so agribusiness, there's a lot of space in agribusiness. And so let's get the young people, let's put them in that area. We built some greenhouses at Dawinya, about 80-something of those greenhouses. And our intention of building them was to bring young people and train them how to do scientific farming. So you're not going to take a hoe and cutlass anymore. You have a greenhouse, you'll be trained how to produce your vegetables, your tomatoes, your peppers, and all that. And if you come together, you can export and earn a foreign currency. So these are all ideas that we have. It will be in our manifesto. I'm sure MPP is listening. Maybe you might want to copy and put them in your manifesto. But there's a lot that we intend to do in terms of sustainable jobs for young people. So, Albert, do you have any more questions?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Just one quick one. I think one of the policies that made the NDC government very, very unpopular was the withdrawal of the nurses
training allowances.
Now the government has introduced it. The fear might be that if you come back, you go back and withdraw it. What do you have to do?
Well, you know what has happened? They've restored the training allowances, but they've restricted the number of Ghanaians who can go into nursing training and into teacher training. And so we have a lot of our brothers and sisters sitting at home. Because government can pay the quantum of training allowances, if a training institution could take 600 students, they're taking 200, and so there are 400 sitting at home. And I mean, we thought that that was not a preferable option. So we said, look, this restriction of quotas for training colleges and things is because of the burden of paying the training allowances. Now, in 2017, government budgeted 232 million Ghana cedis for trainee allowances. So they pay you the trainee allowances. And then when you come out, there's no job for you. The 232 million, if a young trainee who comes out of school and is employed earns about 1,300 Ghana cedis. If you divide 232 by a young trainee's salary over 1 year, you would have been able to employ 12,000 nurses. So you prefer to spend 232 million in school and come out, and government does not have the money to employ you. Is that a better option? And so we tried to explain, and I said, look, it's a matter of principle for me, and that is why we had implemented that. Now, our intention was not to take the trainee allowances from them. We were shifting them onto the student loan. And so what we're doing now, our policy working group, is looking at how we can expand the student loan in order to cater for all students in tertiary institutions and cater for them in a way where instead of paying them the lump sums at the end of 3 months or something, we'll give them a monthly stipend from their student loan allowance so that they can use it for the day-to-day living that they have to do. But, I mean, what has happened has happened. I hear they can't even pay. There are many months in arrears. And it's something we'll come out clearly on in our manifesto. Our manifesto group is working on it. We won't change the status quo immediately. We will retain whatever they have for now, but we will expand the student loan trust. And when we're confident that it is giving enough security to students, whether they are teacher trainees or nursing trainees or they are in Cape Coast University, then we'll cut it over. And so everybody will be happy. Where do we go? Julius Kofi Gagnon, 80 greenhouses for farming. That's quite huge. God bless you, Mr. President. It's at Dawinya. Anybody who wants can go to the Dawinya irrigation project, the greenhouses are there. Many of us have graduated from the colleges of agriculture in the country, but many of us end up sitting in the house without being employed to bring our expertise. What are you going to do about this situation? If you look in our manifesto of 2016, we said that we're going to create farmer service centers that will provide services to the farmers. Now, attached to those farmer service centers, we're going to have agricultural extension officers. And so within the area that the farmer service center covers, the agricultural extension officers who are employed by the farmer service center will be the ones to teach the farmers the new strategies for increasing their production and all that. So that will be another way we're able to employ the agricultural students. But apart from that, I believe that if you are trained as an agricultural officer, you must demonstrate it by having your own farm and also doing something in agriculture. And so what we'll do is we'll take the agricultural students, we will build for them greenhouses and open field. They'll be trained, how to produce, their own food and also be like a farmer. You can do your extension work, but also have your own farm, either a greenhouse producing scientifically, so that you can bring the farmers and come and show, look what I did, look at what I've harvested. And so when you're talking to them, they know the experience from your own farm. And so that's what we'll do. We'll encourage the students leaving Agriculture Institute to have their own farms at the same time as they work as agric extension officers. Mr. President, please, how do you intend to deal with the cedi dollar issue? Or you also arrest it and hand over the keys to the IGP? The thing I've learned to do is not to do politics with the foreign exchange. And I've always said, because of the structure of our economy, we are an import-dependent economy. We must increase our own productivity in order that we reduce the amount of imports. Because once there's a demand for imports, then you have to provide the foreign exchange cover. So if you put your political career on arresting the dollar and handing over the key to the IGP and saying that, if the fundamentals are not right, the foreign exchange will expose you, I don't see with what logic you can come back and say that it doesn't mean that your fundamentals are not right, But that is what our colleague did. What we are going to do is that we're going to encourage import substitution. And so for rice that our farmers have grown in plenty quantity, we can grow that same rice that Ghanaians like. Recently, when I was in office, we brought rice seed from outside, which is perfumed rice, and we gave it to the farmers at Estuary, and they started producing it in Estuary, and there was a huge demand for it. So if we give them the rice seed, that Ghanaians like to eat, and they grow that seed, we will put in rice milling plants. A rice mill doesn't need to be a huge factory. You can have small rice milling plants that can mill and bag the rice and take it to the market. And so what we'll do is we'll put small rice milling plants in all the rice growing areas. And they'll be owned by private sector people. Their job will be to buy the rice and mill it and put it on the market. And what we'll do is we'll cut the amount of rice coming into this country. We will reduce the amount of rice so that our locally grown rice, Ghanaian perfumed rice, can also have an opportunity. What is happening is a lot of the imported rice, people are dodging the duties and things, so they can afford to bring it and put it on the market at a lower cost than it should. And so our local rice finds it hard to compete. But it will give incentives to our farmers, give them the right rice milling equipment, threshers, harvesters, and all that. They'll be able to match up with the imported rice. Araba.
Piggyback on that rice statement. It seems you and the MPP are on the same page when it comes to, consuming locally produced rice, for example. The president has urged everybody to go out there and eat local rice. So on that score, I believe that you're on the same page with the MPP.
But don't eat it just because the president says they should eat it. They'll eat it because they like to eat it. And that's why you must give them the right, rice that meets the taste of Ghanaians. If you don't give them the rice seed and they produce that rice, and he eats this one, he says, I prefer this, and this is imported, he'll eat it. And so that is the...
Are you suggesting they're not giving them the right seeds?
I don't know what seeds they're using currently. But like I said, we brought a seed, we introduced it at Estuary, we brought a Thai expert who came and grew it. He had a seed multiplication farm. and he was growing that seed and supplying it to the farmers. And what he did was he took some of the rice they produced and sent it to the rice mill. They milled it, and he put it in an imported rice bag and brought me one bag in the house and said, Mr. President, eat this rice and let me know what you think. They cooked it. It was like any perfumed rice from anywhere. And so when he brought it, he said, how did you find it? I said, oh, but this is imported perfumed rice. He said, no, it's grown here in Ghana. And so if you give them the right seed, you provide the milling capacity, you give them the threshers, the harvesters, they will rise to the occasion. Just that the president says, eat local rice, who make Ghanaians eat local rice.
So you think that
aside
the
from that,
is not enough? You
must make sure that you either use tariff measures and things to reduce the importation of imported rice so that they also have a chance to go into the market. Let me go quickly to, Mr. President, I'm a teacher. I want to know if you cancel the licensing exams for teachers. Yes, I'll cancel it. Simple, straightforward. I believe that if we improve the examination, the final exam that they take, and we improve the quality of teaching and learning in the colleges of education, you don't need for them to pass their exams, come out, and go back and write a licensing exam. And so when we come into office, we'll take out the licensing exam. We'll improve the quality of teaching and learning in the colleges of education so that when they pass their exam for the colleges, you know that this is a person who is a professional teacher and can handle the children that they'll be given. Should we expect you to appoint 150 ministers in the event that we vote for you? No, I think even 125 ministers are too many. And when I started, I said the president can get rid of at least 40 of those ministers, and it won't change anything. And also, he must reshuffle his government. I mean, for 3 years plus, the president has never done one single reshuffle. Does it mean that all the ministers are performing to the best of their ability or that people are happy with their performance? I don't think so. So not only cut down the size, but from time to time, you must move people, take some out, so that they give off their best to, if they know that they have a job for a lifetime, 4 years. That's what breeds the kind of arrogance you're seeing amongst the ministers and the ostentatious lifestyles that they are displaying, because they know that whatever they do, the president is not going to remove them. Ofori Enim from Connecticut. Mr. President, please, what immediate plans would you have for Ghanaians who are unemployed due to the ban on small-scale mining? In office, we came out with a new blueprint for improving small-scale mining without causing the kind of damage it has to the environment. During Professor Mills's time and the early part of my time, we used the military to chase the boys. But we realized that it wasn't having the kind of effect. And then aside from that, it was creating all kinds of distortions that we didn't want the military to get involved in. And so I announced that the military should pull out. And let's come out with a program where we help them to be able to take advantage of the resources God has blessed us with and be able to find jobs. Because if you set up a good small-scale mine that is using the best practices and will recover the land after they have finished, then all these young boys going into deep holes and the holes collapse on them can find work with these small-scale mining companies. And so we left a whole blueprint. We hadn't started to implement it. I actually was calling a stakeholders meeting in Kumasi, but the elections interrupted. So we said, look, let's win the election. When we come, we'll call all the small-scale miners and the illegal miners, and we'll put this program to them and get their buy-in, and then we'll implement it. One of the things we're going to do was to decentralize the mining. And so we're going to have district mining officers who will register everybody who is doing mining in the community and make sure that you're following the right steps. You will pay a little something as what we call a reclamation bond. And so as you work, whatever you get, you pay something small as a reclamation bond. When you finish, if you push the topsoil back, you plant some trees on it and all that, we'll give that bond that you put away, we'll give it back to you. If you don't, then we'll use that money to employ some people to come and reclaim the land, and then we'll pay the money that you left to them to be able to reclaim the land. And so we had all these ideas that we could have implemented, but the people of Ghana are the ultimate, and who are voted out. It's my hope that this government will continue from where we left off. But if they don't, and by the grace of God, we will implement a policy that allows us to take full advantage of the resources that we have, and at the same time make sure that we don't destroy our environment. One of the first things we'll do is to stop mining along our water bodies and in watersheds of rivers. And so you can mine in other places, but you won't be allowed to mine in water bodies. Gold for us into the future still would be a major export item. Oil is reaching the end of its days because of climate change. And so fewer people want to use petrol-consuming vehicles. The age of electric cars is coming, and other things that will stop using fossil fuels. And so because of that, the price of oil will never exceed $60 again, unless there's a catastrophe or something. Otherwise, into the future, the price of oil will be 60 and below. And so countries like us cannot think that we are depending on oil into the future. We need to be investing in the other areas like gold, which God has given us, in order to grow our economy. If we put everything on oil, which this government is doing, the growth that they're saying, fastest growing economy in Africa, is because of the oil sector growth. The real sector growth has stagnated. Construction is growing at minus. Mining has gone down. And so if we just think oil alone will take us, we're going to be disappointed. And Didi and Princess, let me hear from you once again. You represent the future of our country. And what else do you want to know from me as a wrap-up?
So I'm glad you mentioned the environment. It's a personal interest of mine. With the growing climate crisis, I want to know specifically what kind of measures your government is going to put in place to check this problem, especially with the floods that are always recurring.
Okay. They are not only floods, they are also droughts. Yeah. And so in many parts of the world, you see droughts. In other places, you're seeing fires. This year, Australia has forest fires that are worse than anything they've ever seen in the history of the world. You know, recently it was California. And then in Asia, in Indonesia, they have a forest called Borneo, which was also on fire. You heard about the Amazon fire. So the world's climate is becoming drier and hotter. And so if we don't take time, the remaining forests we have will all be destroyed. Unfortunately, there are climate change deniers. And one of them is the president of the richest country in the world. He believes that climate change is a hoax, unfortunately. But all of us, in my time, when I was president, went to Paris for the COP agreement, and we signed onto the agreement. All our countries came up with our, we call it NDIs, our nationally determined initiatives to control climate change. Some included protecting our water bodies, protecting the forests, afforestation, and all that kind of thing. And so we already have our national determined goals for the climate change. The government just has to take it and make sure that it is implementing it. But one of the new initiatives we'll come up with is to combine with the private sector to grow at least in 4 years 100 million trees in this country. It will not only provide jobs, it will also protect the watersheds of our water bodies. People are, destroying where we receive a lot of our rainfall. And if we don't grow trees there to protect it, a time will come when the rivers will no longer exist because we would have cut all the trees at the catchment areas of those rivers. And so to grow at least 100 million trees, 25 million trees a year, it can be done. It's being done in Ethiopia. I saw Ethiopia's afforestation program. And they are growing trees. On days, everybody in the country, including the president, everybody comes out and takes part in planting a tree. Not only planting a tree, growing the tree. When you plant the tree belongs to you. You must make sure that the tree survives. And so that is the kind of, things, those are the kinds of things that we need to bring to the issue of climate change. There are many other things that one can talk about. Reducing the use of charcoal. I mean, if we do a project that allows more of our people to use gas, then we will depend less on fuel wood. It was done in NDC time. There are different kinds of cook stoves that could take our Banku, what do you call those bowls, the aluminum pots, Indeed. That is saying, indeed, you don't know. Princess, you don't know. You've never cooked with that is saying before. We did cook stoves. That could take out that is saying, Francis, I will use something for. And they'll do the banku in it with the bankuta, and they will go like that, And so we did cook stoves that could accommodate that. And then a small gas cylinder. And we did refill stations all over the country. So when her gas is finished, she puts a spare, and then she takes this one and go and refill. We even had, we gave pickups. And so they used to put gas cylinders in when we were young and go from door to door. People were giving areas to cover. And so they filled, Arab, I remember that. They filled, it was Goel that did that project. They filled the pickup with full gas cylinders, and they come to your doorstep and exchange it. I mean, these are all initiatives that we want to bring back so that more people have access to gas, so that we reduce the use of charcoal and fuel wood. Otherwise, a time will come when there will be no more trees to cut down, no more charcoal to burn, and where would that leave us? Okay, Princess. And then after that, we'll go.
So in terms of equality, what's your take?
Before that, we have some 24 minutes to end today's session. So if you're online, you can continue to send me your questions.
So I want to know what your take on women empowerment is and what you can do to facilitate such a sector and make it more enduring for the girl child to enter. Okay.
Women are the majority of our country's population, 51%. And so you cannot develop a country when 51% of the population is kept behind. And so women should not only be empowered, they should be our partners in everything that we do. And so women should have the same opportunities as men in being able to get jobs, in serving at the highest echelons of government. And so that we have a commitment to. When I was in office, we pledged to have 30% or more women in my government, and we achieved it, and actually exceeded it. Some of the most important ministries under my government were manned by women. Hannah Tete was our Minister of Foreign Affairs. Sheriaiti was our Minister for Fisheries. Marita Brew Apia Opong was our Attorney General. Jifa Ativo was our Minister for Transport, and several others. Oyelita was Gender and Children. And so we had a lot of capable women serving. And I would say that they were some of the best ministers. They, did the work to the best of their ability, and I really had no complaint about the work they did. And so for me, it's not difficult to appoint women into government. I believe that we should even aim for 50-50 if we could, have as many women, serving in high government positions, because then that will encourage their recruitment at lower levels of government. If they see women at higher echelons of government, then it will take away the prejudice that prevents them from even, achieving at lower levels of government. Then there's the Affirmative Action Bill. We were taking it to Parliament, or we took it to Parliament when the new government came in, and they said they wanted to look at it again, so they took it back to Cabinet. And it's still been in Cabinet 3 years on. But if they bring it to Parliament, the minority will join the majority to pass it. But if by the grace of God I come into office and it's not yet passed, we will pass that Affirmative Action Bill. And it will indicate by policy what we really want to do to give women the opportunity. Mike, Mr. President, the current government is trumpeting the issue of 1D1F. Would you abandon them as they are doing to some of your legacies? The point is, we don't even know where those factories are. Because after first they said they had finished 80-something, now they say 58. And when you look through the list of the factories, some of the factories were existing before even the 1D1F policy came into being. And when I have asked, I'm told that even though they were existing factories, they were giving some money to enhance their production. Well, if you say that, then it means 1D1F started long ago, because I set up the Exim Bank, and we helped so many Ghanaian industries. But I didn't go and put signboards in front of them and say, this is one district, one factory. The pharmaceutical industry. I gave 50 million Ghana cedis at a time when the cedi to dollar was 2 point something to at least 6 pharmaceutical companies to expand their production lines in order that they can produce more drugs for Ghana's consumption and also export to the neighboring countries. And because of that help that we gave, some of these pharmaceutical companies started exporting drugs to Liberia, Sierra Leone, to Burkina Faso, and other places. And so if we come into office and there are actually 1D, 1F projects that have started, we will continue and finish them. We're not going to abandon them halfway or quarter way because we didn't start them. We'll let the work on them continue, but then we will adjust it a bit. You see, the thing is, production does not lend itself to political delineation. And so the value chain of factories goes beyond political districts. And so we would rather go for what I call staple crop processing zones. And so if in this area, the majority of people are mango and plantation and watermelon farmers, we will put a factory there that processes watermelon and mango, not because we want to put 3 factories in 3 districts. There'll be a factory that buys the watermelon and mango from all the factories and processes it. If we have an area that produces ginger, it might be 2 districts that are the biggest ginger producers in Ghana. We will not say because of politics we're going to put 1 ginger factory here, 1 ginger factory here. We'll leverage the economies of scale and put 1 factory that buys all the ginger off the farmers in those 2 districts. So it's not going to be 1 district, 1 factory. It's going to be staple crop processing zones. And so if Fumbisi and all the other districts there are producing rice, then we'll put the rice milling capacity in that area. Afife, we'll put a rice mill there. You know, the other areas, Asuchari, you put a rice mill there, so that you look at the value chain rather than this populist 1 district, 1 factory, 1 district, 1 factory. And so that's the change we will make. And I'm sure that it will make more sense, it will be more viable, and with that we're going to use purely the private sector. I'll give the private sector the wherewithal or guarantees. If we have to give them guarantees to borrow the money and do it, we'll give it to them so that they can set it up, they can manage it themselves, and increase the productivity in this country. Please, are you happy with what is happening to the Commander Sugar Factory at the moment? And that's Farasi Mohammed. I'm absolutely unhappy. We worked with the Indian government, and the Indian government gave us an Exim Bank facility to build that factory. Right from the start when we began, it was obvious that this government in opposition was against the factory. They said all kinds of things about the factory. So I was not surprised that when they came into office, they quickly abandoned it. The Exim Bank facility was in 2 parts. 1 part was to build the factory. The second part was to grow the sugarcane. The sugarcane growing part was $25 million. We took it to Parliament, but we did not finish processing before we left. When this government came, they said their priorities with Indian Exim were different. They threw out the sugarcane growing and left the factory to stand. Of course, if a factory is standing, you need to maintain it. And so for 3 years, the factory has not been maintained. It has deteriorated. And you say because it has deteriorated, you want to sell it off to somebody for $12 million. I think that that is wrong. And I don't know why this government wants to do what it's doing. When we come into office, we will apply for the sugarcane growing component of the loan so that the factory itself has about 3,000 acres. We'll let it grow the 3,000 acres as the nucleus farm to feed the factory. Then the rest of the money will be used to develop outgrowers in that whole sugarcane growing belt. And they'll be guaranteed that any sugarcane they grow will be bought off by the factory. The problem with the sugarcane in the area is the old breed. And so it doesn't grow big, and it does not have as much water, sugar in it. And so there are new breeds that are bigger, they have more cane sugar water in them. And so the factory will give them the new planting material so that they plant that one to be able to harvest, more volumes of sugarcane to run the factory. And so whoever is buying it, that is a sale we will review when we come. And if you mean review means, nationalizing, I know they'll interpret review, but we will look at that sale again because I think it's not fair to the people of Ghana. Prince Kese Gloria. Sir, please touch on the finance sector reforms again. Too much damage has been caused by the cleanup. Well, I talked about that extensively. I think that with a fraction of the debt that has been created, we could have saved, some of these companies. Of course, some of them probably would have let go, but to just, cancel all those, clean out all those Ghanaian banks, I think it was wrong to do that. It's created a huge debt, more than 30 billion, and I think we would have needed much less than that to bail them out. They should have been given some more time, both to correct the problems that they had, and then also increase their capital reserve. What this government did was, you came and the financial sector was having problems. Now, some of that problem was caused by government itself, because we gave contracts to Ghanaian contractors and suppliers. They went to the banks and borrowed money to effect those supplies. They supplied the goods and services to governments. We didn't pay them, and so they also couldn't pay the banks. And then you come and say, no, yes, we owe the contractors, but it has nothing to do with you. Let's see that you are solvent. But if you had paid that money that you owe to the contractors, and they had paid it to the banks, some of the banks would not have failed. And so you refused to pay the contractors for 3 years. The banks were struggling because they didn't have liquidity. Then at the same time, you come and say, increase your capital reserve from 80 million Ghana cedis to 400 million Ghana cedis within this frame of time. Otherwise, we will shut you down. And so the posturing of the Bank of Ghana and the Ministry of Finance, if you don't get 400 by this deadline, we'll shut you down. And they made utterances that made Ghanaians know that there was something wrong with the banks. And so, of course, what happened? One of the bankers told me, he said any day they opened their doors, people were coming and withdrawing their money. Nobody was coming and depositing. I mean, there's no bank in this world. I mean, let any of the Barclays or Stanchaps or anything, let anybody know that there's a problem with that bank. They call it a run on the bank. People will just come and take out their money because they're afraid that the bank will go under. Right now, it has eroded our people's confidence in the banks. Somebody told me that he's happy the 200 notes are coming because now he keeps his money under the bed and the money is bulky. So if the 200 and 100 comes, he'll just go and change that, and that one he can keep it under his bed. That bank, he doesn't want interest, he doesn't want anything. That is what happened when we did that 50 Ghana withdrawal. For those you were not alive then, where everybody who had 50 Ghana, was asked to surrender it to the banks. It broke the confidence of people in the banking system. It has taken years to recover. And then the government goes and does this. I spoke to somebody who has 1 million Ghana cedis in the bank, and they say they've capped his money. He should come for 10,000 Ghana cedis. He says he won't bother himself even going for that money. And so it's created a real problem, and it's something that we're looking at. We've met some of the people from the banking sector. We've met some of the victims who have suffered as a result of this crisis, and we also intend to meet with some of the owners of the banks, to get their ideas, as to how we can restore Ghanaian indigenous capital's participation in the financial sector. It's in our interest. We can't leave that sector to only the foreign banks. We must have Ghanaians participating in the financial sector. I like Prince Shadrach. I like your idea of the People's Manifesto. We're ready to spread the good news. Yeah, we're going to come round, and for those of you we haven't reached yet, just be patient. The Manifesto Committee will come round. Sometimes I'll join them. We'll have town hall meetings, and we'll take more of your views. A lot of the views I'm espousing are some of the views we've already even collected from Ghanaians, meeting with you. Let me take one more question from our in-house guest, and I think I'll give it to Francis.
Okay. Mr. Your Excellency, it's about, I know your former appointees were being harassed. Some were even persecuted. Some were mischievously removed from office. Now when you come back, are you going to do the same thing?
I have nothing against investigating, people who have held a high office. And I've said several times that if I did anything wrong, in my period in public office, I have no problem with being called to answer. And it should be the same for anybody who has served in high office. Of course, there's a thin line between harassment and prosecution. If you want to prosecute, go ahead and prosecute. But this thing where they just intend to harass you and call you to EOCO, every week you have to go back, you don't know what kind of investigation they are doing, or they say report to CID every week, go ahead and investigate. And if the people are liable, go ahead and prosecute. All of us who hold public service must be ready to account for our period in time when the people entrusted the mandate in our care. And so I don't have a problem. If we come into office, if people have done wrong things, and I can see a long list of things that have been done wrong, that the president has become a clearinghouse and says, oh, nothing happened here, nothing happened here. We're going to look at it, and if it was right that he served as a clearing agent and they did nothing wrong, that's fine. But if they did something wrong, we will let the institutions work. That's why I'm saying that the fight against corruption is not a political directive. It is strengthening the institutions to do their work without interference. Leave the public prosecutor. I mean, if we come into office and the public prosecutor is there, we tell him, look, investigate any cases of the past government. And while we are in office, if anybody is doing something that is wrong, you must investigate him too. It's easy to investigate your opponents after you take power. But the true test of the fight against corruption is to investigate your own. And that is what I did. In all the cases that came before me, I asked the agencies to investigate. And in many cases, National Service, we sacked 100 and something people. We put 30-something of them before court. They are still before court. I don't know what is happening to that case. We had the JIDA case. My colleague, who was a member of parliament with me, is in prison today because we had the courage to go ahead and do an investigation, and the court found him liable. I'm sad that he's there, but the mandate the people of Ghana gave me was to do my duty when it comes to doing that duty. And so all the things that came up, I made a commitment that we will investigate. And it's the same. If I come back into office, if allegations are made against my officers, I will have them investigated. And if they are liable, let the law take its course. So everybody who comes into government must come in being very careful that if you don't do the right thing, you could end up, in an unpleasant place. All too soon, it is over.
I won't forgive myself if I don't ask this question, which is very dear to my heart. As you know, Joy FM is championing a campaign called the Clean Ghana Campaign.
Yes.
And we do know that this government has what it calls a policy to make Accra the cleanest city by the end of the first term, according to the president. But what is your plan for sanitation in the country if you are elected president?
Accra has become the dirtiest city, I think, in the whole of West Africa. Because I've been to Abidjan recently, I've been to Abuja, and I mean, they look much cleaner than Accra is. And so if the president had taken it as one of his promises, then he has failed very badly. And especially with the fact that you have a sanitation minister, you can't understand what the sanitation minister is doing. In our time, we introduced the National Sanitation Day to encourage people to clean around their environment. Because of, unbridled opposition, some of the MP people encouraged their people not to take part and said it's the duty of government to clean and that they pay their taxes, so why should they clean around their compounds? I think that we should change that mindset. The day Nanado reintroduces National Sanitation Day and says we should clean our compounds, I'll come out and join and clean. Already, I don't even need anybody to. We had overgrown grass in front of where I live. I came out with my staff and some of my neighbors, and we came to weed. And I got lampooned. Why was I coming out to weed? It was causing accidents. The grass had overgrown. And so if you were coming from the front of our estate, you could not see who was coming around the runabout. I have children who drive. Must I wait for my children to have an accident before I take the initiative to mow the grass? So I decided one day that if they don't do it, we'll do it. And we did it. And it was a good initiative because the next day, or a few days later, they brought a tractor with a mower, and indeed they mowed the whole place right up to the Maxwell Mahama runabout.
I see.
So we will move sanitation ministry back to local government. I think it's one of the most useless ministries. It hasn't proven itself It has not achieved anything in the last 3 years. So we'll move it back to the local government ministry. We'll put a deputy minister there who we will empower to make sure that the district assemblies are doing the right thing and that they are surcharging people who keep their compounds dirty or who do not keep their surroundings clean. All too soon is over. Araba, thanks for that question. And thank you very much for joining me once again on my Facebook Live series. It is heartwarming that you remain active citizens who are prepared to demand more accountability from your political leaders. This is justifiable because Ghana deserves better. As I said earlier, I will provide you quality leadership that you are yearning for. I've taken on board all your suggestions and your concerns. This will inform my next policies and actions as president come 2021, if God wills it. As I indicated, we have begun a human resource gap analysis in order to fill thousands of vacancies that might occur in the public sector. I'll abolish the 60% increase in communication service tax and ensure massive job creation within the ICT, telecom, and services sector. We'll scrap the dreaded double-track system and return to our record of massive infrastructure development across the sectors. I'll cancel licensure exams for teachers. The Eastern Corridor Road will be given priority because it's a major corridor which will facilitate movement of goods and services across many regions. We'll dualize the Accra-Kumasi Road, we'll dualize the Accra-Cape Coast Road, we'll dualize the Accra-Aflao Road to reduce the rates of accidents that occur on these single carriageways. Let me thank you all once again for participating in this session, and I wish to thank my in-house guests for honoring my invitation and for their insightful questions. I commit to a peaceful, idea-based campaign devoid of insults, for insults have never educated a child. I wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thanks for coming. So let me give you a handshake each and hope that you enjoy your Christmas.